Money in marriage. Sometimes it does this. Other times it does this.
Money is the number one source of conflict. Doesn't matter how much you have, a little or a lot.
It's amazing that money hits us in a place in our marriage that no other subject does.
Really is a decision.
You've got to do something different.
Men and women are different.
You can agree on your goals in life when you start communicating about money. This is going to bring you so much closer together.
You will be amazed at what happens in your relationship.
This is my life. This is our family. What are we going to choose to do with it?
Please welcome to the stage national best-selling author, Rachel Cruz.
Hello, hello. Well, happy Valentine's Day. So glad you all came to a financial event and a marriage event. No, we are so happy that you are here, and for so many of you flying from all over the country, driving from all over to be here in Nashville to spend the weekend with us, and all of you out there live streaming, we are so happy that you are joining us. And I'm so excited. These events are so fun. I love them so much because tonight, it's about you. It's about your life, it's about your marriage, it's about your money. And whenever we have couples events, I always know that one of you is just so excited to be here. You heard these tickets are going on sale and you thought, we are gonna be in Nashville? We are going? You waited to midnight when the tickets went up and you went online and you were just planning and you couldn't wait. So how many of you, who's that in the room? You just were so excited to come here. Yes. And then the other spouse was like, I'm sorry, we're doing what for Valentine's night? What? Oh, really? Okay. God, really? Are you sure? Okay, it's in Nashville. They have good restaurants, good meal. Okay. I guess I'll come. How many of you are that? You can be honest. You're in a church. Don't lie. Yes. Well, the good news is I'm probably more on your team than the nerd that brought you. So everyone just assumes growing up as Dave Ramsey's kid that I just love talking about money all the time and I'm so good at it. And all we did growing up was, talk about index funds, and we had mutual funds birthday parties and budget camps every summer. But thankfully, that was not the case. Mom and Dad obviously were very intentional with teaching us how money works, and that was such a gift. But I'm actually the spender and the free spirit of my own marriage. So a lot of what we're gonna talk about tonight, I have to tell myself what I tell you. So I get it, I totally get it. But this is an incredible night because, I look at it, I'm like, man, for Winston and I, even our story, we've been married 10 years. We celebrated 10 years in December. And thank you. We hit the decade mark. And we have 3 kids now. So this is actually my first thing back from maternity leave. So Charles is almost 4 months old. He's our newest. But we have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-month-old. So prayers are welcome in the Cruz household. So I actually get a night away. So this is great. My Valentine's night, I'm with adults. Winston's watching the kids, God bless him. But I look at our marriage even, and I'm like, man, what we're gonna talk about tonight, what Les is gonna talk about with communication, I'm like, God, Winston and I, we use the stuff that he talks about, and it works. We've been walking this money journey together for 10 years, and I can tell you, as a living testimony, we're not perfect, but it works. And so studies show that people, they have a snag in their life when it usually comes to marriage and money. And so we see this problem everywhere we go. And so we thought at Ramsey Solutions, okay, we need to create a solution. So we created this event for you guys. And I will just tell you, I don't want this to be a disservice. You have come to Nashville, most of you have traveled in, and the last thing I would want is for you just to walk out of here and be like, oh yeah, that was a fun night, that was good. I really want you guys to take charge, take the information we're gonna talk about, and actually work on it. do the stuff, have the hard conversations, start implementing some of these principles, because tonight we're gonna give you the information to not only better your marriage, not only better your money, but also to better your life, but it's up to you. So as you walk out of here, we're gonna give you a plan in place. We're gonna give you conversations to have together. But again, it's up to you to create a better marriage, a better financial situation, and a better life for the two of you. So we are so pumped. And so to kick off the evening is my good friend, Dr. Les Parrott. He has been speaking on marriage for over 25 years. He is hysterical, he's brilliant, all the things, written dozens of books. And so you guys get a gift tonight from hearing from him. So help me welcome to the stage my friend, Dr. Les Parrott.
Hey, everybody. How you doing? How many of you have ever had a communication meltdown while talking about money with the person you're seated next to? Keep your hands up, and I want you to look around the room. You see the people that don't have their hands up? What do we call them? And they're in a church. Hey, this is gonna be fun. I always like to know a little bit about who I'm speaking to. Indulge me just here for a minute. And by the way, this is being broadcast all over the place. And so even if you're in a church group or whatever somewhere else, do the same thing. But if I'd like just to know, anybody engaged to be married? Stand up if you're engaged to be married, would you? A number of you. That's fantastic. Congratulations, you guys, all the way up there. Congrats. Go ahead and be seated. How about couples that you're not quite engaged, but you're on the edge of commitment? Oh, I got one. Oh. I noticed just you stood and she remained. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're kind of in agreement. I got you. All right. Any singles at this Valentine event? Just hoping to have a date sometime in the next year. How about like newlyweds? You've been married less than a year. Stand up if you've been married less than a year. Right down here, all over the place. Look at that. Fantastic. Congratulations, you guys. And how about people who've been married for like more than a year? Stand up, stand up. There you go. Not a trick question. Were you actually deciding, have we been married more than a year? Or? So if you've been married more than 5 years, keep standing. And more than 10, 15, some of you are looking at each other like, how long have we been married? They're talking about it over here. 15 years or more, keep standing. 20 years, 25. By the way, I'm talking about being married to the same person consecutively. 30 years of marriage or more, keep standing. You're looking at me like, you're looking at me like, just keep going, punk. 35 years of marriage, 40 years of marriage, 45 years of marriage. Right here. Anybody else? Are we down to just this couple? Am I missing somebody? I can't see. Oh, okay, there we go. So 45, what was I on, 45? Let's go 47 years of marriage, keep standing. Oh, we lost you guys. 47, and over here, let's go to 48. We lost them. Are you guys the last ones? Don't sit down, you're gonna win a car. Stand up. She's sitting down and you're standing up. He wants the car. How long you guys been married? 49 years. Fantastic. Awesome. I wish I did have a car for you. You'd think Dave Ramsey could budget that into this thing. Man, that's awesome. I should have at least a book or something that would... Oh, I know. I have a book. It's called, it'll change everything for the two of you as well. It's called Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. So just see me after. Wow, almost 50 years of marriage. That's incredible. Well, 35 years for Leslie and me. And by the way, we have the same name, so it's a little confusing, all right? I'm Leslie, and she's Leslie, and it's just the way God planned it. So it's even more complicated because I'm the third. That means my dad's name is Leslie, my grandfather's name is Leslie, and then I married a Leslie. And so when we had our first son, we named him John. John Leslie. So, and he has a brother, Jackson, by the way, too. But hey, this is going to be fun. You have a little seminar guide in front of you that we'll use tonight as we go through this material. And I'm going to talk to you about something that I call love talk. Love talk. And this is kind of my way of saying I'm going to help you crack the code for your personal talk style. Everybody in here is hardwired uniquely for a conversation. And until you really understand that about yourself and how you're designed for a conversation and how your spouse is designed for a conversation, until you get that, you really can't have truly meaningful money talks. And Rachel's going to come out in the second half and give us some incredible practical information on that. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about this thing called love talk. And so we got to start with love. It's Valentine's. We got to get into that. And so I want you to think with me right now. And by the way, since it is Valentine's, you're all here with your sweetheart. Just let's make sure everybody's on just has the right attitude as we talk about money and marriage. Just turn to your sweetheart and just say these words: "You really need this." You feel a little bit better, don't you? We all need this. But just to kind of get your wheels turning here on Valentine's, if you were to come up with a recipe for romantic love, what ingredients would go into that? If you kind of had to whittle it down to the most important things, the top 4 or 5 things that you might put into your recipe for romantic love, what are they? Just holler them out at me. What do you got? Humor. Respect. What? What? Help me. Chocolate? No wonder I couldn't hear it. Like, chocolate. Okay, sure, I can see that. Chocolate, why not? What else? Patience, commitment, gracefulness. Lots of good things. Sex. All right, who said this? Stand up. No, I'm just kidding you, I better give her a book for sure. Here's my book on how to love like Jesus. So, come on down here. There's a book called Love Like That. Paul writes a big passage about how to love like Jesus, and then he closes that 3-word sentence, love like that. Really, how do you love like Jesus? So I just have a feeling you need this. So, yeah. Sex, for sure, sex. We'll talk a little bit about that here. So we could go on listing all the ingredients for romantic love for a long time. For the longest time, actually, we left definitions of romantic love or recipes for romantic love to poets and lyricists and musicians. Social scientists didn't have much to say about romantic love. It was too kind of mushy. It wasn't scholarly enough to study. That all changed a few years ago at Yale University when a fellow by the name of Robert Sternberg, a very respected psychologist, came along, did this massive study on romantic love, and concluded that it really comes down to 3 things. He actually calls this, are you ready for it? He calls it the triangular theory of love. Doesn't that sound like a sleeper? I know that sounds really boring. The triangular theory of love. But it's super practical. It's just a way to think about what goes into love. And he says you can boil it down to these 3 ingredients. You can write the word on each side. And the first word to write on one side of the triangle is passion. Passion. And passion is the biological side of love. Passion is the part of love that just kind of flows with the hormones, We don't have to do anything in particular. It just kind of automatically happens. It's what got the 2 of you together in the first place, is passion. right? Somebody said passion, though a bad regulator, is a good spring. In other words, it's good at getting love going, not so good at keeping love going. I had a opportunity to do a guest lecture series at Purdue University a while back, and at the end of my talk, they gave me a tour through their research facilities and their marriage and family program, and state-of-the-art stuff. And I said, well, hey, what are some of the research programs you have going on right now? And they said, well, one of the most interesting is a longitudinal study that we did on passion with married couples. And I said, well, what's surprised you? Because that's always the most interesting thing in research. What do you kind of discover that we didn't expect? And they said, well, we knew there would be a gender difference. We just didn't know how specific it would be. And I said, well, what'd you find? And they said, well, we discovered that married men prefer to have sex on days of the week that begin with the letter T. Isn't that bizarre? Tuesday and Thursday seem to top the list, as well as Saturday and Sunday. Today, tomorrow, Thanksgiving, just the T days. She's taking notes on this over there. I can see that, by the way. Passion. But let me ask you, if you're a married couple, do you have passion at a 10 out of 10 every day of the week, every week out of the year, all your married life long? No. I got a no right over here. There's a lot of feeling behind it. Yeah, we don't have passion at a 10 out of 10 all the time. We were never designed to have passion at that level all the time. We wouldn't get anything done if we had passion at that level all the time in our marriages, right? And yet I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody come into my counseling office and say, hey, doc, I've lost that love and feeling. When what they mean is, I just don't have passion at a 10 out of 10. Well, you're not supposed to. It's just a third of what love is. On the other side of this triangle, we write another word, and that word is intimacy. Intimacy. And if passion is biological, intimacy is emotional. Intimacy is that part of love that comes about because you feel like this person understands you and you understand them like nobody else on the planet. You get me and I get you. Intimacy. It's when we understand that it's like we're reading off the same sheet of music. Intimacy. And we have that because of our narrative, the story that we're writing together. This is our love story, nobody else's love story. It's our love story. And things happen that only the two of us can really understand because nobody else has lived it like we have lived it, right? Every couple in here has unique things in their love story. Some are difficult, some are challenging. Leslie and I told you about that first baby, John, that we had, and we'd been married for a number of years before he came along. We were so excited, and finally, when he arrived, he came into the world 3 months ahead of schedule. That means he was a preemie, not just a preemie, but he was a micro-preemie. He weighed 1 pound when he was born. Have you ever seen a baby that weighs 1 pound? When I tell my university students that we had a baby that weighed 1 pound, the guys look at each other and go, is that good? I don't know, 1 pound. Way to go, doctor, pound. If you don't know, that's small. In fact, at the suggestion of a neonatal nurse, I took off my wedding band right there and I slipped it over this is when he was nearly a month old, slipped it over his entire hand, clear up to his elbow, clear up to his shoulder to give you some perspective. They said if he ever survives, you're going to want a mile marker on that. And by the way, that little baby proved a lot of doctors wrong. He's a junior in college today. So, that's a part of our story, right? And when you go through something like that, and he's in the hospital with multiple surgeries and came home and there's 911 calls and there's oxygen tanks, he's hooked up, all kinds of stuff that our house is quarantined, we couldn't have guests over. And when he kind of finally got to a place where he was, could be around other people and just more relaxed and not tethered to machines and all that, I'm telling you, the most exciting Saturday night in our life was just to get into our family room, put a little blanket down and put him on there, and we just sit there and look at him. Oh, look at him. He's did you hear that little noise? Isn't that sweet? Isn't that wonderful? And he kind of moved there a little bit. Les, did you see that? And we found out our friends didn't find that nearly as enthralling as we did, right? Couldn't care less, right? They hadn't gone what we'd gone through. And you have parts of your story, and that's part of intimacy. It brings you together because you know the experience, even like your sense of humor. You ever been into a social setting or maybe a party or something, and somebody says something and you just crack up, dying laughing, and then you look around and nobody else is laughing except your spouse, you know? And you just think, thank goodness I have somebody else. We're gonna be talking about this for the next 20 years, right? That's intimacy. But let me ask you again, if you're married, do you have intimacy at a 10 out of 10 every day of the week, every week out of the year, all your married life long? Not if you're like most couples. Because some days it feels like, do you even know me? I mean, Leslie and I, we got a lot in common. Similar heritage, values, dreams. We got a lot, and same name. I mean, we got a lot in common. And sometimes I think, does she even know me? How could you have said that? Why would you do that, right? Do you even know who you're married to here, right? It's just like, it just isn't always 10 out of 10. And once again, Sternberg says, hey, it's just a third of what love is. Just one side of the triangle. On the base of this triangle, you can write another word, and that word is commitment. Commitment. Now, if passion is biological and intimacy is emotional, commitment is willful. So you can kind of think of these as the hot, warm, and cold ingredients of love: passion, intimacy, and commitment. And commitment is that part of love that says, in spite of all the things in my life I can't seem to pin down, in spite of all this stuff out here that just swirls about, I can't quite nail down, in spite of all that uncertainty, I'm gonna make one thing in my life rock solid. And that's my relationship with you. Where's that come from? Your hormones? Your emotions? No. It's the part of love that is willful. It's the part of love that is a decision, commitment. Passion, intimacy, and commitment. Let me ask the question again, but don't answer it because I know how most of you will. But let me just pose the question: if you're married, how many of you have commitment out of 10 every day of the week, every week of the year, all your married life long? And most of you go, well, yeah, that's why we got married. Okay, I get that. That's the big I do. That's the big commitment. But there's an energy level that infuses that big commitment that isn't always at a 10 out of 10. Why? Because you have a big deadline at work. Oh, because you're struggling with this illness. Oh, because you have this kid that's out of control. Oh, because this other thing's happening over here. Oh, because the game's on. I mean, it could be anything, right? We don't always have a conscious 10 out of 10 commitment into this relationship because we're traveling at the speed of life, and life happens. So even commitment, the energy level, is not always at a 10 out of 10 because our focus can't be on that relationship all the time at 100%. Just doesn't work. So the bottom line of all this research was not just to identify these three ingredients. What are they? Number one is passion. Number two is? And number three is? The bottom line was not just to identify the ingredients of romantic love, but the bottom line of this study was to also discover that love, romantic love, is very, very fluid. It's not a static thing that you fall into and you fall out of. Love changes. There's an ebb and flow to love. There's seasons to love. And the kind of love that you have this Valentine's may not be the kind of love that you had last Valentine's or the next Valentine's or next week, because love changes. So what do you do about that? We can't, in fact, whenever I have a chance to tell, if I'm talking to a bunch of engaged couples and I talk to them about love and the triangular theory of love, I'll tell them, hey, if you ever wake up some morning after you get married and you have passion at a 10 out of 10 and intimacy at a 10 out of 10 and commitment 10 out of 10, and you roll over to your spouse and he or she has all three of these ingredients at a 10 out of 10, I tell them, we got some advice for you. Take the day off work. It's going to be a good day. Right? But you can't expect to wake up every morning with all three of these ingredients at a 10 out of 10. But what can you do? What do you do if the passion isn't doing so well these days, or the intimacy or the energy level you're putting into your commitment isn't quite there? Well, there's a little exercise Leslie and I designed some time ago. We've been doing for years. We've talked to lots of couples. It's called How's Your Love Life? And this little exercise is so simple to do. And it's non-threatening. You can begin to do this as soon as you walk out of these doors if you want to. It's so easy to do. It takes you less than 5-10 minutes. And it might be like a Saturday morning or something. Leslie and I are, getting something to eat, and we're waiting for our food to be delivered. And one of us will just say, hey, how's your love life? We both know what that means. We got a little piece of sketch paper, and we draw this little diagram. Passion, intimacy, and commitment with a scale of 1 to 10 over there on that y-axis. And then we just simply reflect on where am I at right now. Not where are we at, but where am I at right now. Okay? So we're not diagnosing the relationship, just taking a self-inventory. So I'm thinking to myself, passion for me, it's pretty good. A little room for improvement. I'm going to give that a solid 9. Okay? Intimacy, I feel very connected to Leslie. I feel understood. I feel like we're in tune, in sync. I'm going to give that a good solid 9 also. A little room for improvement, but doing pretty good. Commitment, never been more focused, never been like I got it dialed in right now with Leslie. I'm giving that a solid 10. All right? So I've done that on my side of the table, on my little paper napkin. Leslie's doing the exact same thing on her side of the table, and she's saying to herself, passion for me, it's pretty good. A little room for improvement, I'll give that a solid 2. And intimacy a 2, and I'm still committed to him, not sure why. Sadly, you think I'm joking. This actually happened a while back, and actually long ago when our kids were little, I remember doing this exercise, and it was like this. And we slid them across the table. And by the way, you each do this on your side of the table, and then you just simply slide them across the table, look at it, and then what happens? Yeah, she cries and I storm off. No, what happens? What happened? We start to talk about it. In fact, this is the world's greatest shortcut to a meaningful conversation about your relationship. I promise you this. Taught it to tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of couples, and I can tell you, so many couples will come back to us and just say, hey, this was such a convenient way to kind of get to stuff that really matters in our relationship in a non-threatening way. So you simply share your list, you go back and forth, and as you talk about it, sometimes really practical things happen. I remember when our kids were little and we did this, and Leslie, her passion level was pretty low. It was like that, and I'm going like, hey, what's going on? She said, well, I'm just exhausted. I mean, we just had this little baby, and now that he's kind of moving around and stuff, it's causing even more anxiety. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, he's escaping out of his crib at night. Has anybody had a baby like that? Escapes out of their crib? And so she said he's walking around, and I'm afraid he'll fall down the stairs, and I can't, the last thing on my list of things I want to do is enjoy passion right now because I'm so anxious about that. And because I'm a helper, I said, well, let me see what I can do to help. And with your passion level, there might be a benefit for me in this. And so after that breakfast, we went down to like a Babies R Us or whatever, and it's the same place where George gets his pants, by the way, the guy that was out here earlier. And I'm sorry, George and I have a thing. He'll have the last word because he'll be out here before. But at any rate, we went to the Babies R Us store, and I said to the manager, I said, hey, we got a little one that's crawling out of his crib. I said, anything you have that can kind of solve that problem? He said, absolutely. Took me over. Do you know that they made these like little tents that you put over your crib? It's like a little mesh tent, and you zip them in at night. It's like baby prison. It's incredible, right? But so sometimes practical things happen, but generally it's just a time to be understood. I'll tell you, just give it a shot. Do it once a week. Hey, how's your love life? And rank on this, because you're not evaluating each other. It's just talking about my inventory. Here's why my energy level for our commitment is low right now, because I'm just so bogged down with this project. It's so stressful at work, right? Or whatever it is. It'll give you both more empathy. By the way, long before Sternberg ever did his study at Stanford or at Yale, somebody else discovered it, named the Apostle Paul. This happens all the time in my life. I always think, oh man, psychology's uncovered this new thing, and then I discover it in God's Word. And sure enough, here it is. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, there is more to sex than mere skin on skin. Sex is as much spiritual mystery as physical fact. We must not pursue the kind of sex or passion that avoids commitment and intimacy, leaving us more lonely than ever. So there it is, passion, intimacy, and commitment. So there's a little primer, Love 101 on this Valentine's. Now, I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about communication. Once we talk about communication, then we're going to talk about putting these together in this thing I call Love Talk, and we're going to crack the code of your personal talk style. But let's talk about talking for a little bit. Whenever I think about communication, I always think you got to start with the fundamentals, with the basics. And whenever I think of the basics, I think of this guy. Who's that? Vince Lombardi, world famous football coach. He was known for the fundamentals, the basics of the game. And in fact, when the team wasn't doing so well, he would come into the locker at halftime. He would hold up a football to all these men, played professional football, right? He'd hold up a football. Anybody know what he'd say? Men, this is a football. Let's start there, all right? It was his way of saying, let's get back to what we know, what we need to do out there, and that is play the fundamentals of this game. And so let's not take anything for granted. By the way, Vince Lombardi Jr. is a neighbor of ours out in Seattle. He's an attorney. I had lunch with him some time ago, and I said, hey, I tell that story about your dad holding up a football. I said, is that true, or was that more apocryphal? He said, absolutely true. He did it numerous times. He said, even as a kid, I remember being in the locker room when Dad would do that. And he said, one time Dad held the football up, men, this is a football. He said, one of the linebackers in the back row said, slow down, coach, slow down. So we're going to slow way down and talk about the fundamentals for communication. I'm going to give you 2 skills for successful communication with each other. And here's the first one. Skill number 1 is to clarify content. Clarify content. This is so important. And you want to say, well, no, duh, we do this. We just need to understand, so we got to clarify content. Okay, I get it, but it's amazing how we kind of take that for granted. Do you know that for the words we most frequently use in the English language, there are on average 3.5 different meanings? That means there's lots of room for misunderstanding. So we read between the lines, we jump to conclusions, we make assumptions, right? Leslie came into my office not too long ago, and we were headed out to something, and we were going to give some remarks together, and I was at my desk in my study, and I'm shuffling through stuff and trying to figure it out and packaging it up my laptop, and she came in, and I'm kind of distracted, and she said, hey, how do I look? And she spun around in her dress, and I looked up from my stuff, and I said, fine with me, and I went back to my stuff, right? I got my stuff all packaged up and ready to go, and I'm standing there ready to get to our car, and she's not there. Les, where are you? Still getting dressed. What do you mean? I thought you were already dressed. And she came out, she had a completely new outfit on. I said, what are you doing? We're almost late. I said, what's going on? She said, I could tell you didn't like what I was wearing. I said it was fine with me. She said, yeah, what I heard is fine with me. If you want to go out in public looking like that, you can do that, you know. That didn't even enter my mind. I liked what she was wearing. I was just fine with me, right? We make all kinds of assumptions. We jump to conclusions. In fact, let me illustrate this a little bit. I'm going to put something on the screen behind me. I want you to read it out loud in unison. We'll do it on the count of 3, all right? Here's the phrase, 1, 2, 3, love. All right, how many said love is now here? Raise your hands. All right. And how many said love is nowhere? Raise your hands. There's the optimists and pessimists on Valentine's Day in the year 2020. All right. I guarantee you there's a couple of freaks in here that said, love, I snow here. So, you know who you are. We need to clarify content. Such a fundamental. No, duh, we do that, right? You got to be reminded so many times to just clarify content. The second skill, also very fundamental, but a basic for sure. It's a little bit more advanced, and that is to reflect feeling. Reflect feeling. Now, you got to understand, every conversation between a husband and wife, and virtually anybody else, but certainly a husband and wife, there's a river of emotions that flows between us. And as a skilled communicator, what you want to get adept at is almost like you're panning for gold. You want to sift through all the verbiage in the conversation and lift out the little golden nugget of an emotion that you're hearing and hand it back to them and go, hey, is this how you feel? Yeah. Yeah, you're the first person all day that really gets it. You're the first person that really understands what I'm feeling. Maybe the first person in my entire life. That's the power of reflecting feelings. It's such a rarity. When was the last time you intentionally did that for each other? To think, I really want to listen with what Theodore Reich used to call the third ear. I want to listen not just to the words, but to the emotions underneath the words. When did you do that? You know, it's a challenge. And by the way, just in the short time I've been out here on this stage and just kind of looking you guys over a little bit, here's what I can tell you. Roughly 50% of you are going to have an easier time reflecting feelings than the other 50%. Do you know who you are? This is not a sexist thing. We know this from research. Women have a larger feeling vocabulary than men. They literally have more words in their vocabulary. They're like a walking thesaurus of emotions compared to most men. You ask most men, how you feeling? What do they tell you? Fine. Not hungry, I'm good. Little exaggeration, but you get the idea, right? So reflecting feelings. Now, guys, I want you to hear this because sometimes it feels like, oh, I'm just not good with feelings and reflecting feelings. I don't know even how to do that, you know. Here's an incredible kind of secret about this thing. You can be dead wrong when you're reflecting feelings to your wife, and it doesn't matter at all as long as you are, does anybody know? Genuine. As long as you're genuine, right? Because our conversations, everybody in here has a built-in radar detector for phoniness. You know when somebody's not really present with you, right? How do we know? How do we know when somebody's really genuine? Do you go up to your spouse and go, hey, I'm feeling really genuine right now, so let's talk, right? How do you know? We pick it up, right? It's like almost unconscious. There's eye contact, right? And the body language isn't like this, right? And there's a receptivity. It's like, oh, they're fully present with me right now. Do you know that even when we're genuinely present with somebody, our pupils dilate a little bit more? Now, we don't go around and look at each other's eyes to see how genuine you are right now, but we pick up on those kinds of things. And so when you have that, you can be dead wrong. And so I can say to Leslie, wow, it sounds like you're really feeling kind of upset about that. And she'll go, well, no, not so much upset as sad, really. Oh, yeah, sad. That's what I was going to say next, is sad, yeah. You know, as long as she's sensing I'm with her, that I'm trying to understand her spirit, she's going to help me. So guys, don't get discouraged in this. And by the way, the other thing is, don't use this as a technique. That's what I mean by being genuine. On the drive home here tonight, don't go, just start reflecting. Sounds like you feel really hungry right now or something. And expect her spirit to open wide up. Oh, you understand me, right? If you're doing it as a technique, it will fall flat. Do this sometime just as a little self-experiment without telling your spouse or anybody. Just go into a conversation sometime and just focus on reflecting his or her feelings. You will see the power of doing this. It'll be one of the greatest conversations that you ever had. I'm not kidding you. It is so powerful. I give the assignment to my students sometimes in a counseling class to illustrate the value of this. I say, go into the dining hall, sit at a table with people that you don't know very well, and just reflect feelings and clarify content. See what happens. They all come back. There's electricity in the room the next day we meet. You wouldn't believe it, Dr. Parent. I have 5 new friends. We were there so late they had to flick the lights off and get us out of the table. Because it opens up people's spirits when you do this. As long as you are genuine. Let me do this real quick. Can I get like a volunteer, a female volunteer that would come up and just talk to me for a quick second? Somebody close by? Anybody willing to do that? Yeah, come, make it fast. Yep, come on. And what I'm going to have her do is just talk about anything in the world that she wants to talk about. Take your time. It's okay. It's being broadcast live, but that's all right. What's your name? Let's go right here. What is it? Rebecca. All right. And Rebecca, you can hold that right there. And how long have you been married to your husband there?
Almost 5 years.
5 years, fantastic. And where are you from? Keep that up by you.
I'm where we live in the DC area.
DC area. Oh, you came a long way. Awesome, so glad. So you have a simple job. You're going to talk about anything in the world. Do you have kids?
No.
Okay, you can talk about your next vacation. You can talk about stuff at work. Doesn't matter. Anything. Make it real, though. Okay. And what I want you guys to do is not focus on Rebecca.
Yes.
Yeah. Not focus on Rebecca, but focus on me, because I'm going to do 2 skills. What do you think the first skill is I'm going to illustrate? Clarify content, and number 2, I'm going to? All right, let's do this. Talk about anything in the world you want to. Keep that microphone right up there.
Okay.
And just look at me, which is you and me now.
All right.
Okay.
So I'm a music teacher in Virginia, and
You teach music?
I do.
Yeah. That's cool.
I teach elementary music.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready
I bet you
to...
love it.
Yes, I do. I
Yeah.
really love it. I teach kindergarten through 5th grade. I'm getting ready to go to grad school this summer.
Really? Grad school? You'll never regret that. Are you excited or anxious about it?
A little bit of both, because
Yeah.
I've been out of, school for a little bit. And
I went to graduate school for 6 years after college, and it's a valuable thing. All right, let's stop
I hope
right here.
so.
Let's stop here. What's wrong with this picture? Some of you guys are going, nothing, man, that was really good. Getting a lot done up there, man. I'm guessing I didn't feel totally present. Now, was I clarifying content, reflecting feelings? Pretty good, a little bit. You must be excited about that and so forth. But what was missing? Genuineness. All right, give her a hand. I'll give you a book, too. Let me give you. Here you go. In fact, I got to talk about that. Come to my table and I'll give you this. Okay. I promise you, I will. Come at the intermission, I promise you. All right. I got to talk about that later. So, clarify content, reflect feelings. These are the basics. Couples, this is communication. Well, no, duh. Now, we've talked about Love 101, Communication 101. We're going to mash these together and come up with something that I call Love Talk. And this is where we take it to a new level. What we're going to discover here when we get to this whole concept is, well, in fact, let me ask you, what if I could introduce you to an architect that would put an addition onto your home and wouldn't be totally spectacular looking, but it was just a simple room, big enough for maybe a couple of chairs and a table. But whenever you went in this room, you would have the greatest conversations of your life. Can you imagine? Whenever you went in this room, you could say whatever you wouldn't have to filter anything. You'd say what's on your mind and you'd be completely understood. Not only that, your spouse could talk to you and you'd be completely understanding. Can you imagine a space like that? If you had a space like that, you'd come home from work and go, hey, meet me in the room. I got to talk to you about what happened at work today, right? You'd find that you'd be having all your meals in the room, right? Who wouldn't want a space like that in your relationship? Well, what I'm about to teach you is how to build that kind of space, virtual space, in your relationship. And it all has to do with what I call emotional safety needs. Because if you can figure out what makes you feel emotionally safe and what makes your spouse feel emotionally safe, you will have the greatest conversations of your life together. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But let me illustrate it with something that kind of sets this up. Leslie and I were having dinner, and time kind of got away from us, and we realized, we both had commitments, and we just kind of were enjoying our conversation with our kids at the table, and they were little at the time, and I had to give a lecture, late night lecture across town at a university, and Leslie was on our church board, and they were doing a pastoral search, and so she had to drive up north, and so she calls a babysitter that is used to kind of being on call at a college campus where we teach, and at the time we were a one-car family, and so she says, can I borrow your car? And so she's making her arrangements. Meanwhile, I had already taken off to my lecture. So we both go do our things. Now, end of the night, it's maybe 10 o'clock, something like that. I'm driving home on Interstate 5, back to our home, and as I'm driving, all of a sudden, I notice this car really riding my bumper. And I'm thinking, good night. And so I pull into the other lane, let him pass, and boom, slides right behind me into the other lane. Well, that's getting my attention. What's going on here, right? Staying right on my bumper. And so I speed up a little bit. Well, they speed up too. And then I'm thinking, what in the world is wrong with this person? Little did I know it was Leslie in that car, okay? She's driving the babysitter's car, which I've never seen before in my life. And Leslie is thinking, oh my goodness, I've been away from Les all night. I'm gonna be able to connect with him on the freeway. This will be so fun. And so now she gets up super close to me, realizing I'm not recognizing who she is. And so she gets up really close this time and she flashes her lights at me. And I'm thinking, what is this guy's problem, right? And so I peel off on the next exit. It's not the exit I would normally take, but I'm not gonna stay on this road with, this maniac. And so I pull off the exit. Well, of course, she pulls right off after me. And she's thinking to herself, why is he pulling off here? This isn't anywhere close to our house. And then it kind of registers with her, oh, I bet I've scared him a little bit. And then she says to herself, this could be fun. And so as I'm driving through the neighborhood, I'm thinking, and this is a neighborhood I don't know, and I'm thinking, what is this guy's problem? And maybe it's a student I flunked. I mean, all things are going through my head. And then she starts to toy with me, because she stayed right on me the whole way through these windy roads. And then she starts to toy with me, get to a stop sign, and I take a right, and then she goes the opposite direction. I'm thinking, oh, finally, this guy came to his senses. And then 2 blocks later, boom, right back on me again. So as we're doing this, we're getting closer and closer to our house, but I'm thinking, I'm not gonna pull into my driveway with this psychotic person behind me. Would you do that, right? And so I turn away from our house as we're getting closer, and I figure I'm gonna pull into the police station that's next to the campus. So I pull into the police station thinking there's no way this guy's gonna follow me into the police station, but sure enough, boom, right into the parking lot with me in the police station. So now my adrenaline, I mean, it is pumping. And so I put the car in park, and I'm driving a Jeep at that time, and I get out, and underneath my seat I had a metal flashlight that's 2 feet long for just such an occasion. And so I got out of the car, and I literally am holding the flashlight up like this, and I'm walking toward the guy's car, and I'm thinking, if this guy wants a piece of me, let's go, right? And come at me, bro, right? And so I'm literally so shot full of adrenaline, and the way the light was reflecting off of the windshield of the car, I couldn't see into the car, and so I come along the side to look into the driver's side, and I can't see who's in there, and then I get up close and I put my hands like this, I look and she's reclined her seat all the way back, and she's just dying of laughter. I did not find the humor in it. I literally didn't say anything to her. I got back in my car and I drove home. And the babysitter greets me at the front door. Hi, how was your evening? Fine, get out of my way, And Leslie comes in a moment later and you gotta hear this story, right? So she's laughing. Eventually I did find the humor in it. And so we're kind of laughing together. And she said, that's so symbolic of our interactions sometimes. I said, what are you talking about? She said, sometimes I'm just trying to connect with you and it feels like you get threatened and so you move farther away from me in the conversation. It's the very opposite of what I thought you'd do when we began this conversation. I said, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because sometimes I'm talking to you and suddenly you're welling up with tears and I'm thinking, how did this happen, right? And it's because we've stepped on each other, what I call our emotional fear factors, our emotional safety needs. And we all have them. And we've never talked about it. Have you guys ever sat down and said, hey, let's talk about our emotional safety needs together, right? Even 2 psychologists don't sit down and have that kind of conversation, right? So I want to help it kind of expose that for you. We psychologists like to often say that awareness is curative. Once you become aware of something, you can use that to your advantage and help yourselves. And so we want to do this. And Leslie and I discovered this because here we were, 2 psychologists married to each other. She's a marriage and family therapist. I'm a psychologist. Here we were. We know the right things to do on this communication game, and we're reflecting feelings and we're clarifying content. We're doing all the other stuff we know to do, but yet still we feel like the wheels would fall off of some of our conversations. And we go, what just happened to us? We were just talking about what we're going to have for dinner, and suddenly we're down this lane and misunderstanding each other. How did we get here, right? Well, we began, only two psychologists married to each other do this kind of thing. We began to kind of analyze that, back up from it, press the pause button as much as you can in that moment, and really analyze. In fact, we got so, adept at doing this, we started to call these conversational autopsies. And we started to really say, why did this conversation die on us? And that's when we began to realize we were stepping on each other's emotional safety needs. I want to help you identify yours. There's 4. We did a lot of research on this. There's 4 emotional safety needs. I want to list them for you. They're easy to remember because they spell the word talk. T-A-L-Q. We just spell it a little bit differently, okay? The T stands for time. And some of us are hardwired to feel emotionally safe when our time is being used well. And guess what? When we feel like we're wasting our time, we don't feel safe. So there's just a certain level of kind of urgency you live with if time is your emotional safety need. And I should know because it's my number one emotional safety need. I am hardwired for time. I want to be ahead of schedule. I want to get things done yesterday. Leslie and I live downtown in Seattle in a high-rise building, and because of that, we're on elevators all the time, of course. And this last summer, I came in, and there was 3 guys working on this elevator bay in our building, and I said, "Hey, I don't know what you guys are working on there, but I said since we moved into this building, brand new building, I said ever since we moved into this building, there's a button in there in the elevator that doesn't work." They said, "Yeah, which one?" I said, "It's the one that has 2 arrows pointing at each other. It's supposed to make the doors close faster." And he said, "Yeah, that's not supposed to work." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, it was like way back, like 20 years ago, they passed a law that those couldn't be functional because too many people were getting hurt and closing the doors too early and stuff. I said, "Well, this is a brand new building. Why would it still be in the elevator?" He just paused for the right amount of time. He said, "For people like you." And I still press the button, even though I know it's a dummy button. So time, approval. A is for approval. Some of us feel emotionally safe when we're winning the approval of our spouse. And when we're not, guess what? The wheels fall off our conversation. L is for loyalty. We're going to come back to each one of these. L is for loyalty. Now, everybody in this room prizes loyalty, of course. But I'm talking about kind of a comfort that comes in consistency, in predictability, right? Because some of you don't like surprises. Loyalty. How about tonight, those of you that are married, when you go home, you change the sides of the bed that you normally sleep on? How many feel really good about that? Right? Some of you are going, never. That's never going to happen, right? That's my side of the bed. That's what I'm talking about. There's something comforting in the predictable. And then the Q is for quality. Quality. This doesn't have to do with quality things, or it has to do with basically doing the right thing for the right reasons. In other words, a quality decision. Time, approval, loyalty, and quality. These we know are the 4 fundamental human emotional safety needs. You might already have a pretty good guess on what yours is. I'm going to help you do this real quick because I'm going to give you a little quiz. It only involves 4 questions, 1 for each of these safety needs. And here's the first question. And I want you to answer this for yourself. How do you tackle problems? Are you a reflective problem solver or an aggressive problem solver? Now, if you're an aggressive problem solver, you'll say things like, "Let's just do it now. Let's quit talking about it and get on with it." Right? Why are we still standing here? You're aggressive. Let's get going on this. If you're reflective, let's give it some time. Things have a way of working out. Let's just see how it goes, right? If you had to choose one end of that continuum or the other, which would you choose? Think about that. What do you think I am? I'm an aggressive problem solver. And what does that mean? That means that time is an important safety need to me. And you can have more than one, by the way. But this is my top one, time. Quick illustration. I came home one night from work on the campus. I see Leslie greets me at the front door, a little kiss, a little hug. And she said, "Hey, it's about 9 o'clock at night. She says, hey, the kitchen sink is backed up. I said, it is? Walked around the corner, went in the kitchen. Sure enough, it's backed up. I said, how long's it been like this? She said, all day. I said, what have you been doing? She said, waiting for you to get home. I start to call my friend George on the phone. He's a plumber in our neighborhood. She said, what are you doing? I'm calling George. She said, no, that's embarrassing. It's too late to call George. Don't do that right now. She said, no, it's just, you'll wake up Arliss. I said, it's 9 o'clock. They're going to be fine. He'll be over here in 5 minutes. He's going to love hearing that our sink is backed up. And she said, no. I said, what do you propose? She said, well, let's just go to bed. Let's see how the sink is doing in the morning. I said, do you think little fairies are going to come in here and work on this sink, right? I'm an aggressive problem solver. She's a reflective problem solver. Because I'm an aggressive problem, how many would say, Les, I'm kind of like you. I'm an aggressive problem solver, okay? If you just raise your hand, that's a pretty good indication that time is one of your emotional safety needs. Here's question number 2. Question number 2, how do you influence each other? Do you influence with facts or with feelings? Now, if you influence with feelings, you tend to say things more like, I can just tell you I got a feeling about this. Just trust me. I think this is what we need to do. If you're influenced more by facts, it's like, whoa, press the pause button here. What do we know for sure, right? Let's look into this. We got to really know what we're talking about. Which end of the continuum do you fall on? Now, if you are more influenced by feelings, like I am and like Leslie is, this is my secondary emotional safety need, that's a pretty good indicator that approval is your emotional safety need. You following me? Why? Because when you're influenced more by feelings than facts, doesn't mean that facts aren't important to you, by the way, but when you're influenced more by feelings than facts, you will tend to see signs of disapproval where they don't exist. You will read into things that maybe you shouldn't be reading into because they're not there. I have a friend, he said, man, Les, he said, before you guys ever wrote that book on Love Talk, he said, I knew my emotional safety need was approval. And I said, how'd you know? He said, because I see signs from Barb that she's disapproving of me when sometimes she's not. I said, give me an example. He said, just yesterday. He said, I was in the kitchen. He said, I had a Ritz cracker, and I had a chunk of cheese on the cracker, and I was getting ready to put it in the microwave. And he said, just at that moment, he said, Barb walked through the kitchen, and she looked over at him, and she just said, that cheese is too big, and she walked out of the room. All right? Now, how did he interpret that? He read it as, oh, she's evaluating my diet, and I'm eating too much cheese, and what did she really mean? Yeah, it's going to melt everywhere. It's too big for the cracker, and she just wanted him to enjoy his snack, and she was in a hurry to do something. That cheese is too big, and left, right? And so, approval, right? Are you influenced more by feelings or facts? How many of you say, yeah, I'm kind of like you and Leslie. I think I'm pretty influenced more by feelings than facts. If you're raising your hand on that, pretty good indicator that approval is your emotional safety need. Question number 3. Question number 3. How do you react to change? We have to deal with a lot of change in our relationships. Are you resistant to it or accepting? If you're accepting, you're kind of excited by the change, but not if you're resistant, because you say, let's keep it this way. I don't want to change the furniture now. I just got used to it. Yeah, but honey, it's been this way for 15 years. I know, I'm just getting used to it, right? A certain comfort comes in that. If you're accepting of change, let's try something new. Why live the same day twice? Right? This has to do with loyalty. If you're resistant to change, it's a pretty good indicator that loyalty is your emotional safety need, or at least one of them. Leslie and I were driving home. This happened not very long ago. We're driving home. Now, Leslie is loyalty is very, I prize loyalty, but this is not an emotional safety need for me. I'm like, why live the same day twice? Leslie finds great comfort in going to the same barista at the same coffee shop nearly at the same time most days. And, you know, there's kind of a groove she has. And Anyway, we're driving home from something, and she says, hey, I got to stop at the grocery store before we go home, pick up some stuff for the boys. I said, all right. Driving along, I take a turn she's not expecting. She said, where are you going? I said, the grocery store. She says, it's that way. Oh, I said, I know, but there's a brand new grocery store just opened up over here. It'll be fun to see a new grocery store. She said, no. She said, I want to go to Safeway. I know where everything is, and I can just pop in and pop out. And I said, no, come on, it's a brand new grocery store. Free samples. Are you kidding me? Let's go, And she said, no, just please go to Safeway. It'll be so much easier for me. And plus, I want to say hi to Julie, and it'll just be easier. I said, who's Julie? She said, she's the cashier on Register 3. She works Saturday afternoons. I know she'll be in. You know the name of the cashier on Register 3 on Saturday afternoons at Safeway? She said, yeah, she's really sweet. Even if her line is longer, I wait in that line because she's just so nice. And plus, she said her birthday's coming up, and her birthday's coming up? Who knows that about the cashier on Register 3? If loyalty is one of your emotional safety needs, you understand that. How many would say, yeah, I'm kind of like Leslie, I'm resistant to change? All right, there you go, loyalty. Last question. How do you make decisions? Now, did you know that 25% of our conversations in marriage are devoted to decision making? We spend a lot of our time doing that, so it's important to understand, are you cautious or spontaneous when it comes to decision making? Now, if you're cautious, you say things, I'm not sure yet. Can I Google that, right? If you're spontaneous, yeah, why not? Let's do it. Live and let live. Let's see what happens. It'll be fun, right? Which end of the continuum are you on? Cautious or spontaneous? We have some friends that many times we go out to brunch with or something after church, and it's so funny to watch Joyce. Because Joyce, she's very cautious. I mean, she does the right thing the right way. So we go to this restaurant. It's called Chinook's in Seattle, and we go there routinely. And I know what I'm going to eat before I even pull into the parking lot, all right? I've eaten there so many times. All of us have. Anyway, we pull in, and we get at a table, and we're sitting down, and most of us aren't even looking at the menus because we've already seen them. But Joyce, she is studying that menu, all right? She's looking it all over. Has anybody had the ahi? Is that good? Does anybody know? No, Joyce, haven't had that. Oh, I'll ask when he comes around. I'll ask about that one for sure. And so eventually the server comes over, and any questions about the menu? No, we're ready to go. Oh, no, Joyce has some questions. Yeah, and then we give her about 25 minutes to talk to the waiter. And then she says, are we ready to order? She says, oh, no, not me. I need more time to look this thing over, right? I said, Joyce, how about if we go around and order? Maybe by the time it gets to you, you'll be ready. Yeah, let's do that. Just making sure I'm last. And then we go around and order, and as people are ordering, she goes, oh, is that good? Have you had that before? Is that good? Yeah, I have it every Sunday. It's great, all right? And then it finally gets to her, and she'll ask a few more questions about the specials and other things, and then she closes the menu, and she orders the same thing she got the last time we were there, all right? But she's got to go through the process, due process. And some of you understand that. Because when there's a decision to be made, we're not going to be flippant about our decisions. We're going to make quality decisions. So if you're a cautious decision maker, that's a pretty good indicator that quality is one of your emotional safety needs. We have some other friends, and I always love going on like a little long weekend or something with them because it's like going on vacation with your parents when you were like 8 years old. You don't have to think about a thing. You just show up, and they've done they just take care of everything. And I mean, it starts to rain, and she'll just bring out like ponchos out of her something that she has, Yeah, I'll have a poncho, I guess, And we've had lunch, not ready for dinner, but man, a little hungry, and suddenly she'll just say, hey, I have snacks. Anybody want a snack? Yes, I'd like a snack, thank you. It's incredible. So prepared. They just, they are cautious decision makers. So which end of the continuum? I'm very spontaneous on my decision making. Leslie's a little bit more cautious than me, but it's not a primary emotional safety need. But how many would say, yeah, I'm kind of like that. I'm more of a cautious decision maker. Raise your hand. All right. Good indicator that quality is one of your emotional safety needs. So here's what I want to do. I want you to take a look at this list of time, approval, loyalty, and quality. And I want you to rank order where you are. Put a number next to each one of those, where you think you might be. What is the most important emotional safety need that you have, down to the one that is least important to you. All right? And then I'm going to give you like 25 seconds just to share that with your spouse. Give us a little background music, and we'll come right back together. Just 20 seconds to check in with each other. Go ahead and do that. All right. All right. Okay. All right. So, let's find something out about you guys. And do this wherever you are around the country, tuning in to us. How many of you would say time is my number one emotional safety need? Go ahead and stand up. Stand up if time is your emotional safety need. All right. Wow, quite a few of you. All right. Sorry to waste your time. Go ahead and be seated. How many would say approval is your number one safety need? Go ahead and stand up. Oh my goodness. This is an incredible group. I've never seen a better looking group than this group. You guys are the best people in the room. There's no doubt about that. Such good people. You can go ahead and be seated, sir. He wants more approval. How many would say, I guess loyalty would be my number one safety need? Go ahead and stand up, would you? All right. And if you would, just switch seats with your spouse real quick. No, I'm just kidding you. And then finally, I know you haven't had enough time to think about it. I know you want to study it and read the book first and take the assessment. But if you had to choose, you'd say quality is your number one safety need. Go ahead and stand up. You may not be able to see it from my perspective. This is how they stand up. I guess. These are the good decision makers in the room right there. And if you got a good decision to be made, put it in their hands. All right. So as you could see, a pretty equal distribution of these needs, the 4 emotional safety needs. What's the point? Big deal. What does this mean? Well, what this does is give us a little shortcut to empathy. It gives us a little shortcut to understanding how God made each one of us for a conversation, how we're hardwired for communication. And what does that do for us in real life? Well, it allows us to curb any kind of conversation that isn't going well, because instantly, oh, we know why. And when you know why, it leads to a better how. Let me give you a quick illustration as I wrap things up here. Leslie and I were on an airplane early in the morning, way too early in the morning. And it was one of those hectic things, getting out of the house and all of our stuff ready and making sure stuff was good with the kids while we were gone. And so we finally climb into our chairs, stuff the stuff up above and down below, and just finally relax. I got out my laptop and I'm starting to do a little bit of work, and I look over at Leslie, and this is after we've taken off, and Leslie is reading a magazine. And so we were flying for just a little bit, and maybe 10 minutes into this flight, and I said, reading a magazine, huh? She said, yeah, I'm just exhausted. Just so nice to be just mindlessly looking at these pictures. I said, all right. Went back, doing my work. Another few minutes goes by. Still reading the magazine? Yeah, you got a problem with me reading the magazine? What's going on? Well, no, I'm just thinking that, we have the manuscript due, and you know how it is when we're flying home from an event, we're both going to be exhausted, and, we kind of have that deadline looming. This is kind of our window to get this thing done. The ball's kind of in your court. I thought you might use this time to kind of work on the manuscript. Leslie said, do you have any idea how much time it took? And then she stopped. And she said, wait a second. This doesn't have anything to do with the manuscript. I said, what are you talking about? She said, this has to do with your emotional safety need. I said, do you mean that stuff we teach other couples? she said, I've stepped on your emotional safety need. And I went, what are you talking about? She said, you're feeling so urgent. We have plenty of time to get this done, but you feel so urgent. You want to get it in ahead of schedule, and you're out of control with the deadline because now it's up to me to do that, and you're feeling like some anxiety about that. And I went, oh, yeah, I guess I am. And then I realized, oh, and I've stepped on your primary emotional safety need, which is approval. That's her number one, need, and that's why she was beginning to eyes rim up with tears, and as we're on that airplane. And so, what do you think happened next? I backed off. We were fine, and we turned that conversation around in moments, rather than a conversation that would have been one of those lovely experiences between Seattle and Denver, turned into just a moment in time. And by the way, what do you think she was doing 10 minutes later after that? She was working on the manuscript just like she should have done from the beginning. I can't guarantee you those kind of results, but it worked in that particular moment. Time, approval, loyalty, and quality. It's just a little on-ramp to understanding how God designed your spouse. And when you understand that about them, and you understand that about yourself, you begin to create this space in your relationship where you're going to have some of the greatest conversations you've ever had, whether it's about money or anything else. In fact, if you had a literal room like that in your apartment or your house, your condo, wherever you live, I think there'd be a little moniker over the door. And it would be this verse from 1 John that says, there is no room in love for fear. Well-formed love banishes fear. That's when we have love talk. That's when we speak love talk fluently, and we are completely understanding and completely understood. That's my prayer for you. And when Rachel comes out in the second half, she's going to guide you through some specific conversations that every couple should have, and you can apply the same material to that same concept of emotional safety. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to talk with you tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, guys, welcome back from the break. Joining me now are Matt and Hillary. How you doing, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
How are you?
Good, thank you. So tell me how long you two have been married.
A while.
Well,
It's been a while.
A while? How long?
We've been married 17 and a half years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We know we don't look that
How
old.
old are you? Yeah, that's crazy.
See, that's
17 and a half
always
years.
what happens. Is people say, how long have you been married? And the next question is, how old are you?
Yes, you must have been.
Which kind of makes me feel good, but also bad at the same time.
We were legal. We were legal.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so spoiler alert, you guys are close to paying off your debt,
Yeah.
but it hasn't always been that way. So tell us your story. When you first got married, how did you handle your finances?
Not too well. We were young, as we mentioned, and we kind of both came from very different backgrounds, and we, kind of were just making it. There was a lot of stress, just a lot of getting by, a lot of conflict, and it really didn't have the best effect on our marriage over time. We've been married for a long time, so it's been a process, but in the beginning it was definitely really, really hard and stressful.
Like, that's by far, like, the number one thing we fought about.
Yeah.
Was money. Like, when I look back at the last 17 years, definitely number one.
Yeah, for sure.
So a lot of the couples that go through financial peace and that are here tonight, people who've decided to take control of their money, they have what we call an I've had it moment, where they reach some point where they just say, I've had it, I'm tired of living this way. What was that moment for you guys?
So we actually thought we had it way back in the day. Like in 2007, we actually took financial peace.
Right.
And we're like, this is terrible. That's bad. And I think at the time we had like $40,000 or $50,000 in debt. It wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
And we put like 10 grand that we had in a mutual fund towards debt, but quickly we just kind of
slid back in.
kind of got
Yeah.
Dave-ish.
Yeah.
When something came up, we did the credit card and got some more student loan debt and
Lots more student loan debt. But then a few years ago, fast forward, and things had just gotten really, really hard cash flow wise for us. We built a home, and it was our dream home. We brought our babies home there. But my business, I'm self-employed, was starting to kind of tighten up. And we just kind of realized the gravity of our situation. We had 6 figures worth of debt. And it was just I was actually sitting outside of a Taco Bell listening to Rachel Cruz podcast, getting lunch.
And
awesome.
I did the debt calculator and saw that we would have to take 27 years to pay off our debt at
Wow.
gazelle level.
Yeah.
And I burst into tears and I was like,
Wow.
this cannot happen.
Yeah, so that was your moment in a Taco Bell parking lot, listening to the Rachel Cruze
Thank
show.
you, Rachel.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what'd you do about it? What did you guys do?
She shared that moment with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we did something pretty radical. We put our forever home on the market and sold it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we bought a home 5.5 years ago. It had gained around 140 grand in equity.
Whoa, that's
And we're like,
great.
babe, we can get like almost out of debt if we save this or if we sell this. And I was like, I guess that's kind of right. I didn't really want to, but
It wasn't the easiest decision to make.
Right.
I mean, this was like
and
really
by
our
not
dream
the
home.
easiest, she means it was the hardest decision we've ever
Yeah.
made.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so which one of you decided to sell the house and had to convince the other one? Yeah,
It
that was
me.
you.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. It was just
I'm
this.
ashamed.
Well,
How did you get him on board with it?
the stress just kept mounting, and I think it was maybe over a year's worth of time that we had the conversation.
Yeah.
I kind of just kept bringing it up, and I wasn't even super sure at first, but it was like, this could be a possibility. It seems crazy, and people were like, why would you do that? That's so nuts. Like, you have this gorgeous home, and I'm like, but a home is just a building. I mean, to be debt-free, I would literally say I'd rather be debt-free and live in a box than live in this gorgeous house with six figures worth of debt. That's crazy. So
Yeah.
I convinced him, once the cash flow kind of got a little tighter and we were feeling the squeeze, it was like, okay, we got to do this. Let's
Yeah.
do. And once we checked the market value, we were like, oh,
Like, oh wow,
this is a no-brainer.
this is actually a
It
possibility.
still wasn't the easiest thing. It was hard, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
we did it.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
so a lot of things fell into place for you guys after you made that decision, right?
So this is crazy. So yeah, we sold the house. We ended up having about $20,000 left over.
Yeah.
So we're still working.
Yep.
But the day that we closed, like it was almost like God was like, okay, I approve of this because
It was
she got
nuts.
like 2 new clients and her income went through the roof.
Like tripled
That's
I got
overnight.
I got a promotion at work and my income went up and it was like everything was just like, okay.
The timing was just,
Yeah.
it was uncanny. And the person, we actually moved up the street to a nicer home, which we're renting now. We haven't rented in a long time, but it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's a great
Yeah.
feeling. And the person that we're renting from actually was renting to someone else with a similar story that had inspired us.
Yeah.
So it was just
Wow.
all of it. And they were like, oh, just let us know when you're ready. We'll move out when you're ready to move in. And all the way it all lined up was just,
Yeah.
it couldn't have been more
Yeah.
God and more perfect.
Oh,
Yeah.
So-
our renter said, you know what?
Our-
when we
yeah.
took our landlord.
Your landlord.
Landlord.
Yeah, our future to be landlord. He's like, yeah, whenever you guys sell, just let me know and we'll move. And
Man.
we're like, does
Yeah,
this
that's-
happen in
Yeah.
real life?
It's not real life.
No, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
But it is for us.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Looking back on my life, I see that like so often it takes a leap of faith and it takes doing something scary, and then you look back and you think, wow, God was there the whole time and he was totally a part of that.
Yes.
So that's really cool to hear that.
Yeah.
So would you say you guys, how's your marriage now compared to the way it was early on, now that you are kind of doing this together?
I'll let her answer that one.
It's just, I mean, we've always loved each other, been in love, but like the stress is gone.
Yeah.
It's just gone. I mean,
Yeah.
all the little minor like conversations, like, well, what about this that you spent? Like, we don't have those anymore. It's the most freeing, incredible feeling. I mean, we're still doing a budget, and we're still having conversations, but it's not like we have to nitpick over every little thing and constantly worry about where the next paycheck's coming from or how we're going to pay
Right.
this bill. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I would recommend it highly.
The amount that we fight now compared to how much we fought before, I'm ashamed to say.
It's much
It's
less.
incredible though. Like
Yeah.
when that financial stress is gone, like it's unbelievably freeing.
That's so cool.
And we're not even out of debt yet, but like just seem so much closer. And
Yes.
we'll be at our current rate, we should be out of debt within 4 to 5 months. So.
4 to 5 months. Man, congratulations. That's
Yeah.
Thank you.
huge.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So
I
what
said
would
that.
you...
Sorry.
Oh,
go
no,
ahead.
go ahead.
Before we were like shoveling the beach with a spade,
Yeah. Yeah.
and now we're like, it's like a tiny little pile, and we've got a huge shovel. It's just a whole
Yeah.
different feeling.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Okay, so quickly before we go, what would you say, what advice would you give to somebody watching out there right now who's maybe in the same spot you were just a few years ago right now?
What advice would I give?
I can say, don't be afraid to do something radical that
Crazy.
people are going to think
Yeah.
you're crazy to do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because normal
So many of our
is
friends-
broke.
Right.
Some of our friends are like,
That's what
"Are
we
you
say. It's what
serious? You're
Dave
actually
says all
going to
the time.
sell your house?" Like
Yeah.
that doesn't
Yeah,
make
it
any
sounds
sense.
crazy.
It sounds
And-
crazy, but and let your children in on the story. Don't be
Yes.
ashamed to hide that from your children and not talk about it. We made a poster. We chanted and banged pots and pans and said debt free 2020, and here we are.
That's awesome.
So,
guys.
yeah.
Hey, thank you so much, guys, for sharing your story with
got it.
us. Our next speaker is the best-selling author and host of The Rachel Cruz Show. Please welcome to the stage, Rachel Cruz.
Thank you. I know George joked about your bedtime, and I was like, at 8:30, I'm usually in bed too. So we're having a late night together, I guess. Okay, so Les, taught you guys how to communicate. So we're going to take those tools into how to talk about money specifically. Because when you look at money and marriage together, every study you read, every statistic you see, it's pretty depressing. It's always like, okay, it's one of the leading causes of divorce in America today. One of the reasons couples fight the most is because of money. I mean, you just see everything I read, I'm like, man, it's so sad because I just think, we didn't start out that way. Like when you met your spouse, you weren't thinking, oh, I can't wait to get married and just get in a 2-day fight about the credit card bill. I cannot wait for our car loans just to stress us out to the max, sweetie. Like, no, that's not how you start, right? You start with this like giddy excitement, joy when you meet your spouse. I mean, okay, everyone close your eyes. You live streamers too, close your eyes. I want you to picture the very first time you laid eyes on your spouse. Okay, you can open them. Most of us can kind of go back pretty quick, right? For some of you, it was in elementary school. Some of you, it was Facebook. Some of you, it was at work. Whatever your story is, you remember those first few dates and just how exciting it was. I mean, that's how Winston and I were. We met in college. We went to the University of Tennessee. Go Vols. I had some out-of-staters, but I got a good little Vols cheer there. That's good. And so we met in Knoxville, and I remember our first date, him picking me up from the sorority dorm, and I was so nervous. I mean, I remember thinking in my head, I was like, I hope he doesn't try to hold my hand because it's like sweating, and like, I was a wreck. And you date, and it's just like, oh, and those giddy feelings, if you've been married for more than like 5 minutes, they start to slip away, right? The excitements. But what comes to that is a much more deeper, intimate love. But even with that deeper, intimate love, there still can be stress with money. I mean, you can have a great intimacy. You can have good sex. You can agree on parenting. But when it comes to Americans and their money, there is still a snag when it comes to these conversations. So we realized, okay, let's dive in and figure out, we know the problem, let's talk about the solution. So the solution starts with communicating about money. So we're gonna go through 5 money talks that you and your spouse need to have. And when you're thinking about these money talks, picture yourself sitting in that room, that perfect room that Les talked about, where you guys are together and you can be honest, you can be transparent, you can be empathetic. Like it's the perfect emotional room, right, to be in. Think about having those conversations in that room because that's gonna be really key. And so for tonight as well, at the end of at each talk, we're gonna have something called a talk starter. So I'm actually gonna have you guys start talking to each other and kind of jumpstart these conversations. So just get ready for that. So we'll dive right in to the first talk. Talk number 1 is story talk. Story talk. So why is this talk important? Why is it important to start out here? Because when you understand your spouse's money story, you will understand their heart like never before. And as a result, then all the other talks become easier. Because you're gonna realize talking about money is often more valuable than money itself. And so you have to realize when you grew up, the household you grew up in was like your classroom. And there's lessons that you learned growing up that were great lessons that you probably took with you into adulthood. And there's some lessons you probably wish you could unlearn, right? I think we all have those. So I look back even in my household and, we were taught that you save for a rainy day. No matter what, you have an emergency fund. You always have money in the bank. And that was a great lesson for us to learn. One lesson I would probably unlearn is my mom, Sharon Ramsey. If she were here tonight, I would be telling this story, so this is not behind her back. We love her deeply, but she is probably the cheapest woman on the planet. No lie. So growing up, whenever we got a chance to go to the movies, you could buy this extra large popcorn bag and get free refills. So you like finish the popcorn. Oh, you get free refills because you have the extra large popcorn bag. Well, Sharon would take the popcorn bag after the movie and she'd dump out the extra popcorn. She'd fold it up and put it in her purse. Next time we go to the movies, she would just shake that bag out, send one of us kids to go up to the concession stands and get our free refill. We did this for years. And we were just talking about it a few years ago at a family dinner, and my dad had no idea. And he like stopped us in the middle of the story, and he was like, "What? Sharon, you were stealing popcorn from the movie theater?" And she was like, "Oh, David, I wasn't stealing. I was being economical." But I realized, I was like, okay, that's a lesson I'm gonna unlearn. And so now I have this conviction every time I smell popcorn, I'm like, I gotta buy it. I don't even want the popcorn, but I feel like I gotta buy it. I gotta reimburse all the years of like me stealing. So we all have those things, right? I had one friend and she said, oh, my mom she just told us, you buy everything on sale, you buy everything on sale, you buy everything on sale. And she's like, now as an adult, I can afford a full price item, but I have this guilt and shame because of what I was told growing up, right? Like we all have these messages, we all have these memories of what we have. So again, some were great, but some lessons we want to unlearn. And when you start talking to your spouse about their money story, you're going to realize pretty quickly, more than likely, you grew up in two very different households. Because you're going to realize everyone's money story is different. And you need to understand your spouses. And this talk is kind of like the key that opens the door into that perfect room. Because you start to really grasp and understand, okay, this is why my spouse sees and interacts with money the way they do. They're either just completely copying what they learned growing up, or maybe they're rebelling to the complete opposite. But you start to notice it. I mean, in growing up, in the Ramsey house, credit cards, we always say debt is not a sin. But credit cards basically were, let's be honest. I grew up with Dave Ramsey with my dad, right? Like if I got a credit card, there would be like lightning that just strikes me here on stage. Like I can't do it. You just don't get a credit card. You just, credit card, American Express. Oh, no, you just don't do it. I mean, all growing up, that's all I heard. Oh, this deep-rooted conviction against credit cards. So then I meet Winston, and he didn't grow up with a family that had like this deep, terrible conviction against credit cards. So for him, it was just kind of like, yeah, okay, like I get it. Yeah, it's just not a big thing. And so on our first date, I remember thinking, I'm just curious how he's gonna pay. You just wonder. And I was not some like crazy girl that was like asking for tax returns and like stuff like that, okay? But I was always interested whenever I someone took me on a date, I was like, I just wonder how they're gonna pay. Well, Winston, of course, pulls out his wallet and he pulls out an American, a Capital One Eagle credit card. There was an eagle on the front. And it was Capital One. And I did, of course, what I should have done. I grabbed the scissors out of my purse, went across the table, I cut it up, and I was like, freedom! You will experience freedom. And then he proposed and we got married. No, I did not. No, we used that credit card. He used that credit card for a good year of us dating. And it was, we talked about it later and we got on the same page as money, don't worry. But again, we just kind of grew up in different ways of viewing stuff. And that's okay. But the key is for you guys to get on the same page. So for some of you, you grew up in a household where money was never talked about. It was taboo. You didn't talk about religion, sex, politics, money. Like, you just didn't go there. You never heard your parents talk about it. Some of you heard them talking about it, but it was in the form of fighting, stress, anxiety. Some of you grew up and you just felt like there was no money in every little decision. I mean, you just felt the tension. Some of you, it was freely, openly talked about, and it was not stressful. I had a friend, she said that her dad would come home, and almost probably every other week, he'd say, okay, guys, we got $300 extra. What should we do? And he'd run numbers and show them if we invested it would do this. We could go out to dinner. They just talked about it all the time. Like it was no big deal. So again, understanding how you grew up and understanding your spouse and how they grew up is so, so key. So for this talk starter, I'm gonna give you guys about 30 seconds and I want you to fill in this blank. In my house growing up, money was blank. So think about it for you and talk to your spouse about it. Okay, the acoustics might be bad in here. Oh, some lights just got. But I may not be able to hear you. Some places we can, some places we can't. So but I want you to yell out, a few of you, just like, what was it for you? In my house growing up, money was scarce, stressful, hard, saved, secretive, yes, non-existent. Yeah, it is. It's so interesting. And again, it shows you, okay, were we able to have free and open conversations, or was it closed? Was there a lot of high stress emotion, or was it very free emotion? So you can kind of start to understand, okay, this is it. And again, understanding how your spouse grew up is key. And this is such an important talk, you guys. It's not extra credit. This is required. Continue to have this conversation. All right, talk number 2 is social talk. Why is this important? Because you'll never be able to love your life if you keep comparing your life and your marriage to others. And if you don't do this, then as a result, you will have a lifetime of contentment and joy. We all know that comparisons, you can even wrap social media into the mix, how much it affects our lives. When you constantly compare your life to someone else, you lose. You lose the game of comparison because you're either coming out feeling prideful, like, oh yeah, I got it way more together than them. Yeah, oh yeah, our house is so, oh yeah, oh gosh, we're better. Or you're coming out feeling lesser, thinking, oh, I just can't keep up. Why do they always look perfect? Everything looks so put together. Oh. You don't win. You don't win in the game of comparisons. And then you put social media on top of it, where everyone has this like perfect filter, and you see one picture of someone's life, and you start telling the story to yourself saying, oh, wow, gosh, look at them. They're winning all the time. Like, it's just, their career's always booming. Their house is always clean. Their kids are always well behaved. From one snapshot, the snapshot that they're choosing for you to see, right? We can all admit, it's 2020, we know. It's not real. You're not getting the whole picture. But the problem is it influences us so greatly. Close to 60% of consumers say that their friends' social media posts influence their purchasing decisions. It is like seeped into what we are looking at. And I am as guilty as I'll get out. Okay, I don't know if there's any Enneagram fans out there. If you don't know that word, don't worry about it, we won't get into it. But I'm an Enneagram 3. So this is my kryptonite. I mean, the comparison thing is so real for me. I mean, I was on maternity leave for the past 3 months. I go back to work in 2 weeks. But I'm like, if the girls are napping, I sit there and I just scroll, and I see that one friend, and I love her dearly. But oh man, she has like 5 kids, and somehow they're all dressed perfectly, monogrammed, matching. They're always eating like non-gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free snacks. And I'm like, oh my God, my kids are eating like Gumby stuff over here. Like, I don't even know what it is, but I'm like, just take it, it's fine, right? But I'm looking at her, I'm like, gosh, she just has it. It's all put together. It's all beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I'm like, man, I'm a hot mess. That's how I feel. I'm like, what is going on? Or maybe you see the friend and they've just, redone their kitchen. They've remodeled. And now they have beautiful granite countertops. It's white and it's so pretty. And they have like great light fixtures and like gold hardware. And you're just like, and you look at your kitchen, you're like, oh my gosh, look at that kitchen. It's so beautiful. Or around Christmas, it's always my favorite. You see people posting what they got. And I follow this girl who I don't even know, which is the strangest thing in the world, that you follow these people's lives that you don't even know personally. But she's someone out in California. She got a brand new Mercedes, and she was like, always wanted a Mercedes. # Merry Christmas. There she is. And I was like, God, wow. But then you think, you're like, okay, but listen, like, I don't see my friend when she feels like the hot mess, right? Like, and her kids are going crazy. Like, you don't see that on her Instagram story. You don't see possibly the second mortgage that was taken out on that home to redo that kitchen. And you definitely don't see the 1990 Honda Civic with 300,000 miles. Put it on Facebook. Look what my hubby bought me. # blessed. No, but that's real life, isn't it? Like, that's the life we all live, is the other side. So I just don't want you to continue to buy into this lie that everyone else has it together and everyone's life is perfect, because it's just not true. So stop making purchases and buying yourself a life mostly in debt to try to keep up a lifestyle that's not even real. It's not even attainable. So we have to grasp that, because you have to understand, comparison will not just steal your joy, it will steal your paycheck. So you have to put the blinders on and say, this is what's best for me and my family, good for everyone else. They can do whatever they want to do, but this is what we're deciding to do. And you also have to be careful not to compare your marriage as well. You can't do that, because everyone's marriage looks so different. I mean, you are uniquely created by God. Your passions, your talent, your personality, your fears, your downfalls, I mean, all of it. You are created by God. So unique. So you marry someone that is that unique. So together, you're going to have a unique looking marriage. It's gonna look different. So you have to stop comparing your marriage to everyone else's. So how do we stop this though? How do we stop the comparison living? Well, I have found one word that has helped me so much through this process, and that word is gratitude. Just being grateful. Because in a heart filled with gratitude, there is no room for discontentment. There is no room for comparisons. When you are grateful for what's right in front of you and what you have, and sitting in that gratitude, out of that gratitude overflows contentment. So for this talk starter with your spouse, we're gonna springboard off the gratitude theme. I want you to fill in this blank. One of the things that I'm grateful for that you probably don't know is blank. So fill that out and talk to your spouse. Okay, just by a show of hands, I'm curious. Anyone learn anything new? What your spouse, yes, a few that you're grateful for? Not a lot of hands, y'all. You gotta be thinking, get creative, get creative. Okay, so now that we understand where our spouse is coming from with their money story, and we have the blinders on, we're not comparing our life and our marriage to others, we're focusing on our life, then we can move on to common financial fears that people have. So this is talk number 3, the fear talk. So why is this important? Because when you identify your financial fears together, you instantly have more grace in the conversation. 57% of people said not having enough money was their top fear in life. That trumps crime, snakes, spiders, and even death, is not having enough money. And fear causes us to do crazy things, doesn't it? I mean, the whole story with Les in the police car in the police station, you know, following Leslie, all that stuff, that whole story. I'm like, yes, fear, it makes you do crazy things. My mom grew up in East Tennessee. So every year growing up, we would go spend like a week, 5 days with my grandparents out in this huge farm. We had 13 cousins, and we just had so much fun. I grew up in the suburbs, so like having just acres and acres and acres and cows and like all the stuff. I mean, we had such a great time. And so I remember one year we were there, and down in their basement, they had the ceiling that was like the ceiling tiles like out of school or something, you know, you can like push them up. And so we were jumping on the beds, hitting these ceiling tiles, and one of them got knocked out. And so we played this game of like who can jump up and like jump into the ceiling, you know, the highest. So we're playing this game, and one of my cousins is jumping up, and he's like, guys, I see something in the ceiling over in the corner. And we were like, what? So we like climb on each other's shoulders, we get up in the ceiling, and they pull down this massive glass jar of $100 bills. We're rich. So we said, we couldn't believe it. We were like, oh my gosh, I mean, there has to be $1 million in here. Like, what? And so we ran upstairs, and one of my aunts was up there, and we were like, look what we found. And she was like, what is that? We're like, it was in the ceiling. And then my grandfather came in, he's like, what's going on? And we were like, look what we found, Papa, we're rich. We're all rich. You know, we were freaking out. And he was like, So turns out, Papa still had fears of banking, of the banks. He did not want to put his money in banks because of the Great Depression, all of that. I mean, he still had this deep fear that the bank was going to collapse. So it turns out most of their savings was hidden or buried in the farm, on the farm, all that acreage. And I thought, what, Papa? I mean, I was like 12 at the time, and I was like, and now as an adult, I'm like, oh my goodness. So I laugh because my mama has gone to be with Jesus. She passed away a few years ago, but Papa's 91, and I pray the day does not come soon. But when he does go meet Jesus, I think there'll be 13 cousins showing up with shovels out on that farm to get our inheritance. But yeah, it makes you do crazy things. Fear is wild. But I love what Chip Dodd said. He said, fear, though, it is a God-given gift. It really is. You can look at fear as a gift. It is not a sin, and it can be scary, but it's just the recognition of what we need. And I love that. So fear, good fear, not anxiety, right? On the extreme side, it's anxiety. We don't want anxiety. You know, the Bible says, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, make your requests known to God. So we don't want you to be anxious, but fear is just the recognition that you're in need of something. So when you have a financial fear, it could be irrational, but most of the time it is rational. That you're like, okay, there's something I need here. So when we walk through these fears, we will have these tactical applications because it is important and to recognize what your financial fear is. So one of them, for example, is if something unexpected comes up, we won't survive financially. This is a very common fear, the fear of the lack of security. And this is most women's top financial fear. So husbands in the room, listen to me. Your wife has something that you do not have. We call it a security gland. It is deep in her, and when it starts flaring up, you're gonna know. And I see some, and they're attached to her face at times. And she's like, oh, I don't like that. Oh, that makes me nervous. I don't like it, right? You feel it. And women, we do. We have something that most men don't have, and it's that. It's just this, we need the security of knowing it's gonna be okay. If something happens, we're gonna be okay. So how do you get there? How do you overcome this fear? Tactically speaking, having money saved in the bank brings a lot of peace. So starting out with just $1,000 emergency fund, then once you're out of debt, bumping that up to 3 to 6 months of expenses. So if you could imagine being there, having no payments, and 3 to 6 months of expenses saved in the bank. I mean, that puts you at a completely different spot, emotionally, financially, I mean, all of it. It's incredible the amount of peace that comes when you just have money there, knowing if something were to happen, we're gonna be okay. Another part of that is also budgeting. Getting on the same page with your spouse on where the money's going. And a budget is this, we're not gonna dive too deep into it, but simply a budget is your income minus your giving, saving, and all your expenses, and it should equal 0. So every dollar coming in is assigned to a category. Now, some of you in here are cringing because we're talking about budgeting, and I get it, okay? This was the hardest part for me when it comes to like personal finance, for me to do personally. Budgeting, I hated for so long. I just felt like it was constrictive, it was cheap. I feel like every time I heard the word budget, it was like, oh yeah, we can't go shopping, we're on a budget. Yeah, we can't go out to eat, we're on a budget. We're not going on vacation this year, we're on a budget. I'm like, golly, people on budgets are not fun people. Like if that is what living on a budget is, I'm like, where's the fun? Where are you having any fun in life? Until I learned the lesson a few years into marriage after doing one. At one point when we didn't have a budget, Winston actually released me one vacation. He was like, it's okay, I'll worry about the money, you just go have fun. But I found myself like doing a budget on like a napkin by the pool because I was like, oh my gosh, I realized a budget, it is permission to spend. A budget doesn't limit your freedom. A budget actually gives you freedom. It gives you the ability to choose what you're doing with your money. You are the one controlling your money. Your money is not controlling you. So together, you guys have to do one together every single month. Now, one of you is so excited about this. Probably the one that bought the tickets for the event. And you're just like, oh, I got my Excel spreadsheet in my head. We've downloaded every dollar. Don't worry, Rachel, everything's color-coded. We are good. We call you the nerds. How many nerds are here? Oh, yeah. There you are, nerds. And then the other spouse, more than likely, is the free spirits. We're like, oh, everything's gonna be okay. Can we just chill? It's fine. Oh my gosh, why are you freaking out all the time about if it's gonna be okay? It's gonna be okay. Can we just have fun? How many free spirits here? Woohoo! That's me. There's usually like a wave that goes with the free spirits. So you guys, being complete opposites, more than likely, have to learn to work together. So nerds, just go ahead and do the budget. Do it. It's in your strength. It's your gifting. You like it. It's weird, but you do. So do the budget, nerds, and then bring it to your free spirits and say, hey, here's the budget, and I want you to change something in it. And all the nerds say, no, no. It was right. They're going to mess it up. Why would you mess it up? No. But free spirits, you have to look at the budget. And you have to be engaged, and you have to say, okay, here are some things that I'm gonna change. So if you lower one category, free spirits, you can up another. You can't up all the categories, okay? It has to balance. We're not in DC. Everything has to balance, right? Election joke, 2020, election season. But really, you guys working together. And so understanding that you both bring differences to the table, and that's okay. I'm not telling you to change who you are, but you have to learn to work together. And agreeing on the budget, I promise, is gonna give you so much freedom within your marriage. And that's gonna help with that number one fear. Okay, fear number two is time is running out and I won't get to live like I'd hoped. You know, as kids, as teenagers, we all dreamed of what our life would be like, right? You have this dream, this fantasy of like, this is what my life's gonna look like. And for most of us in this room, it looks very different than what we dreamed about. But some of you, you still have those passions, those dreams, those things that you want to do, but you feel like time's running out. Maybe you want to live on a bunch of land, but you're stuck in a subdivision. Maybe you wanted to go on vacation every year with your family to this one spot, but you just never can find the time. I remember even talking to this one lady, and she told me, she was like 70 years old. She was like, Rachel, you know, I always just dreamed of having a horse. She was like, I know it sounds so silly, but even as a little girl, I just loved horses. And I told myself, like, you know, I want a horse. I got riding lessons one year when I was a teenager, and I loved horses. And I always thought, I have a horse, I want to have a horse. And she's like, and I'm 70 now, and I'm probably not gonna ever own a horse. You have these little dreams even as kids that you're not seeing happen, and it's not becoming into reality. And so, what do? How do you fix this? Well, I'm gonna tell you, majority of people, statistically speaking, debt is the thing that is holding them back. Because money is not gonna be your answer to every problem. I'm not saying that, but it is a tool to help you in life. It is a tool to help you with your dreams and what you wanna do. And so when your paycheck is going out 18 different directions to student loans and car loans and credit card bills, it's hard. It's hard to do anything in life, let alone do the dream that you've always wanted to do. So getting out of debt and freeing up your income is gonna be key. And those of you in here, some of you know this, those of you that don't, to get out of debt, the most effective way is called the debt snowball. That's where you list out all of your debts, smallest to largest, regardless of the interest rate, pay minimum payments on everything, and pay off the smallest debt first. And as you do this process, we find that the average person is getting out of debt in 18 to 24 months. And so being committed to this and saying, you know what, I'm sick and tired of MasterCard and my student loan taking my money because I'm not able to do things for my family. I can't even freaking fund retirement because I'm living paycheck to paycheck. 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Scripture says that the borrower is slave to the lender. You are a slave to who has lended you money, you guys. Like, you go to work when you are in debt to pay other things and not even to pay yourself. So getting out of debt will help fund those dreams because it frees up your income. Fear number 3 is I won't ever get ahead because of how the world works. Oh, if so-and-so gets elected in November, that's never gonna happen. Life's it's gonna crumble. Or the corporate greed's out there. It's the system, it's all rigged. I just can't do it. Now, the truth is, there are a lot of things that are completely out of our control. There's a lot of life that happens that we don't have any say over. But it's not your circumstances, you guys, that define you. It's how you handle them that does. So you can't control if the company offers you a job, but you can control preparing for the interview, being on time, sending a thank you note after, doing some elements. You can't control getting laid off, but you can control what you've been given and getting out of debt and having an emergency fund and setting your family up for something like that. So if it does occur, that you guys are stable and okay. So there are external forces out there for sure, yes. And do some people have harder battles to fight in life? 100%. But you choose whether you stay in the fight or you just give up. No one or nothing is going to determine your future. You really are the one that has the control of what you choose to do in those circumstances, you guys. You cannot have a victim mentality your entire life, because those are the people that don't win. We surveyed over 10,000 millionaires for Chris Hogan's book, Everyday Millionaires, the largest study ever done in America on millionaires. What's fascinating is 97% of them believed that they could build wealth. They believed it. And 80% of them were first generation rich, which means they started with nothing and they built wealth. So just the belief, having the belief that you can do this, having the belief that whether you're broke, living paycheck to paycheck tonight, or you're out of debt and you're building wealth, no matter where you are, the belief that you can control your money and make your money work for you. The belief has to be there. Fear number 4 is, I will end up just like my parents. Just like my parents. I've heard this one a lot. Whether your parents were very poor and you think, I don't want to end up like that. Maybe your parents were on the opposite side. They were super materialistic and they were searching for status all the time. You're just like, I don't want to be like that. Maybe they didn't plan for retirement. Maybe they didn't communicate well around money. Whatever it was that you look and you say, okay, I have this fear that I'm going to end up like that. And it's always fascinating when you have parents and you start to learn as you get older their situation. And for a lot of people, you learn their situation early on in life. And for some people, you find out even as an adult. One of my good friends was telling me that she sat down with her mom over Christmas. This was just a few months ago. And her mom started just kind of like venting to her about how she's nervous about where they are financially. And she started digging in. She was like, Mom, you guys are okay? And she was like, no, we don't. We don't have anything saved for retirement. She was like, what, Mom? And she was like, I know. And they have like $40,000 of credit card debt, all this stuff. And she's like, Mom. And she told me, she's like, Rachel, I had no idea growing up. And she kind of kept pressing her. And she was like, but Mom, like we had big Christmases, like birthdays. Every holiday, everything was fine. And she was like, yeah. Turns out the mom charged like everything on a credit card. Half the time she didn't even tell her dad about it. So they had this big thing like 5 years ago where all this like financial infidelity is what we call it, that came out. It was just a complete mess. And she told me, she said, sitting in that living room, I told myself, I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna do that to my 2 kids. Because she said, I was sitting there, Rachel, and my husband and I they were trying to get out of debt. And they're on a tight budget. They're really trying to like do the thing. And now she's realizing in about 10 years, they may have to help support her parents. And she's like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do that. She's like, oh my gosh, I will never put that kind of responsibility on my kids. I won't do it. So I was telling her about this talk and she was like, that's it. She was like, that's it. And I just drew a line and I will not be like my parents. And I was like, whoa, do you want to come give your testimony on Friday night at the Money and Marriage Event? Because it is a real thing. And that fear is so, so strong. And that's really one of my convictions with no debt. My parents, they filed for bankruptcy the year I was born. And even though I don't remember the initial crash, for me, it is painful enough and enough that I'm like, you know what, it's not even a temptation for me to go into debt. It's really not. I don't need something bad enough to go borrow money. I'm good. I really am. I'm good. And that's what it did. That fear of seeing what it did to my parents, it's not worth it. And so seeing that can actually drive you to good conviction if you have that fear. So out of all of these fears, you're gonna realize that money itself, when you look, it dictates so much of your value system, your dreams, your fears, all of it. It is a powerful, powerful tool. So the fears were, again, if something unexpected comes up, we won't survive financially, time is running out, and I won't get to live like I'd hoped. I won't get ahead because of how the world works, and I'll end up just like my parents. So take this time during this talk starter, and maybe a different fear that you have, it could be one of these, but tell your spouse what your financial fear is in these next 30 seconds. I'm just curious by a show of hands, whose fear is number 1? Yeah, a lot of people. Fear number 2. Fear number 3. And fear number 4. Yeah. So good. And it is interesting, when you identify your fear, you will start to see how it motivates you and how you handle your money, because it will. Fear can be sometimes not a good motivator, but it's a motivator. All right, talk number 4 is dream talk. Why is this talk important? Because shared dreams bring us closer together. When you share a dream, you work together as a team. And as a result, you're gonna create shared accomplishments and a clearly defined future for your marriage. Because when you can agree on where your money's going, you're agreeing on where your life is going with your spouse. And a big part of marriage is creating a life you love together. Creating a life you love together. And money is simply a tool to help you get there. 94% of people who have great marriages work together with their spouse on long-term dreams. So when we look at dreams, there's 2 types of dreams to focus on. There's short-term dreams and long-term dreams. Short-term dreams are 5 years or less. So something you can hit in 5 years or less. Maybe this is moving to a better school district. Maybe this is getting out of debt. Maybe this is taking the kids to Disney World. I mean, whatever it is, 5 years or less, have that dream together. Then you want long-term dreams, which is 5 years or more. So this is, maybe you want to take all your grown kids and their kids on vacation. Maybe it's paying off your house. Maybe it's giving more. Whatever it is, that dream of 5 years or more, having that together. Now, when you look at dreaming, there are 2 types of people. And again, opposites sometimes attract, so there may be both of you here. There is the dreamer. So the dreamer is the person that has 5 new business ideas a day. They believe they can do anything. They're always willing to try new things. They're thinking about the future all the time, the dreamer. And then you have the realist. The realist is practical. They're asking questions like, how are we gonna get this done? How much money is it gonna take? How long is it gonna take? What information do we need? Who do we need to help us with this? They're the realists. Now, there can be a natural rub between a dreamer and a realist. You dreamers out there feel like the realists are Debbie Downers. You always are crushing my dreams. Can you not just dream? You just think they're you're just no fun. And then realists thinks you dreamers are crazy. Crazy. And you're like, no, golly, no, will you just do something? Why don't you just talk all the time? Can we just put something into practice? Can we just do something? But the beautiful thing is that you guys need each other. A great example of this is not a marriage example, but Roy and Walt Disney were the 2 brothers. Walt Disney, of course, we know Walt Disney. He was the brains behind all things Disney, Disneyland, Disney World. I mean, he dreamed up all the characters. I mean, he was the creative mind behind it all. But Roy, his brother, was the one behind the scenes actually doing all the business stuff to make Disney a household name. And Walt was quoted by saying, if it hadn't been for my big brother Roy, I would have been in jail several times for checks bouncing because I never knew what was in the bank. He kept me on the straight and narrow. So Walt created everything. Roy created Buena Vista, which is the distribution company for all Disney. He created all the merchandising that started happening that really made Disney and Disney movies a household name. I mean, he was the brains behind it. So studying these 2 brothers is fascinating, but I think it's in the same way. It's like within a marriage. You need each other. Even though there's a natural rub, you need each other. So having a shared dream together, you guys, it is so healthy, it is so good. Winston and I, we had like a 6-year goal to build a house, and we actually just moved in November, 3 weeks after having a baby. I'm not very smart. We're not very smart, but that's how it worked out. But it was like a 2-year process of us, like finding the lot we wanted to build on. We took time. We were having to save a time. I mean, it was just this long process. But we looked back and we laughed after we moved in after a week because we loved the house. It's so great. But we were like, God, the process of getting here was as much fun as the end result. Because when you're working together, it creates this level of intimacy. You depend on each other. You're working together. And it creates something like you are on the same team. You're on the same team, so having those goals. But what's hard is, again, you're opposite, you're different. And so you're gonna have your own dreams, you're gonna have your own passions. I would live in Manhattan tomorrow if I could. I would move to New York City in a heartbeat. Winston would move to a duck blind in Arkansas. So neither one will probably be happening, but we have our own kind of passions and our things, but having that dream together. But I think it is important for your spouse to know your dreams, because sometimes you have it in your head and you just don't say it out loud. So for this talk starter, I want you to tell your spouse, one of my biggest dreams is blank. All right, the last talk is talk number 5, which is the giving talk. So why is this talk important? Because giving changes you. Because when you start to give, you will live a more fulfilling life and actually build trust with your spouse. A Duke University study found that when you receive a good deed, you have momentary happiness, but you have longer-term happiness when you are the giver. And when we talk about giving, most people, they have the heart to give, but they just don't have the margin. They say, we want to give, but we just don't have the money to give. And I'll do a budget with a couple, and they'll get down, they're like, okay, yeah, but see, Rachel, look, this is our budget. We have no money to give here. I'm like, yeah, that's because your budget's upside down. Turn it around. Start with giving. Because I'm telling you, things start to change. Not just in your external life, but internally, who you are, when you start to live with an open hand, things start changing. So I always encourage people, give a little until you can give a lot. John D. Rockefeller said, I never would have been able to tithe, which is giving 10% of your income. I never would have been able to tithe the first $1 million I ever made if I didn't tithe my first salary, which is $1.50 a week. And that is so powerful because it's so true. We believe the lie, if we just had more money, we would give. If we just had more stuff, if we had more margin and all that, yeah, we'd totally give. But I'm going to challenge you. Giving, it is not a math issue. It's a heart issue. It's where your priorities are. And there's a big challenge out there for people, but I'm telling you, when you start to give, it will not just change your perspective, but it starts to change your marriage. Because you're moving on the spectrum of being selfish to selfless when you live your life with an open hand all the way around. I remember we were married probably like a year or something early on in marriage, and I remember I was kind of freaking out because I had all my friends, they were talking about, marriage and roles people play and all of this. And there was like this big debate. If you're an evangelical Christian, you probably heard words like egalitarian or complementarian, these ways to view marriage. And I was like so stressed. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's right. And we were having dinner with my parents and I was like, guys, what are you? Are you egalitarian or complementarian? Like, I don't know. Like, what is marriage supposed to look like? And my dad just kind of started laughing. He's like, calm down, Rachel, chill out. And I was like, no, but I want to know, like, what do I do? And I remember he looked at me, he gave me the best piece of marriage advice to this day. He just looked at me and he said, Rachel, just serve each other. Just serve each other. And I love that because when you, specifically with your spouse, if you just out-serve each other, there's a lot of problems that go away. If you just fight about who's going to unload the dishwasher, your life's doing pretty good, right? No, I'll do it. No, please let me. But just serving each other, it's amazing what that does. And I'm telling you, when you start giving your money, the outpouring of your serving starts to happen in other parts of your life. But the challenge, I know with money, it is so hard. And within a marriage, there are two types of givers. There's the calculated giver, which is Winston. He's like, we have it budgeted, and he's like, okay, so he wants to research it, look and make sure, okay, yeah, they're legit, all this. I just hear about something on the radio, and I'm like, oh my gosh, give them everything. Like, they're doing such good work. They're doing such good work. I'm so emotionally led. I'm like, I see something, I'm like, oh my gosh, just give them it all, And so that can really be a real rub in it. So identifying, we won't do this talk starter, but on the way back to your hotel or your house, think about it, and you probably know, are you a calculated giver or more of an emotionally led giver? So everything we talked about tonight, specifically with these 5 talks, I just want to tell you all, just have grace, have this umbrella of grace over it all with your money, because no one is perfect. You're not going to do it right. It's not going to be perfect. And if you knew me, you would know that 2 of my favorite things in life are cable. I love cable. We still have cable. Winston always is like, can we just be normal millennials and just stream everything? I was like, no, I do. I love cable, so I do. So cable will always be there. And this gets on people's toes, but it's true. I love politics. I do. I love politics. The fact this is an election year, it's so exciting. I've been on maternity leave during all the impeachment trials. I've watched everything. Oh, it's so good. I love it all. I'm watching both sides. That's the best part. You watch Fox and CNN, you get, what's happening? It's so good. I love it. I love it all. And my friends know this about me. And so one of my friends told me, she was like, Rachel, you've got to watch this documentary on Anthony Weiner. So Anthony Weiner was a congressman out of New York, and bad stuff happened, so he resigned. But then a few years later, he ran to be mayor of New York City. And so they had this film crew follow him during his mayoral run. So it's this documentary about Anthony Weiner running for mayor of New York City. But then in that, if you watch the news at all, if you remember this, more stuff came out about him, terrible stuff. But it's all documented, like all these conversations with his wife, who's Huma, who was Hillary Clinton's advisor. It's all in there. It's all there. It's fascinating. And so my friend was like, you've got to watch it, Rachel. You'll love it. I was like, yes. So I remember I put the kids down for naps, and I was like, okay, I really want to watch this documentary. So I went and looked for it. It wasn't on Netflix, and I was like, where is it? So I just searched it on cable, and you couldn't buy it at the time. You could just rent it, and you had to rent it for $19.99. I know. I was like, man, this is probably a terrible financial decision, but I want to watch it. So I rented it thinking it's going to go in the Rachel line item in the budget. It's all going to be good. No worries. So about 2 weeks later, I come home from work, and Winston had beat me home, and he's in the kitchen, and he's on the phone, and he's like, no, this is so ridiculous. You guys do this just all the time. And I was like, who are you talking to? He's like, Comcast. And I was like, oh, yeah. Winston and Comcast get into it like twice a year, so I've learned to step back, So I was like, oh, okay, I'll let you have your conversation. And he's just, no, you add on stuff. We get all these fees, but no, we didn't sign up for that. And no, I didn't buy a movie called Wiener. I was like, oh no, like, that was me. He was like, what? I was like, I did it. I rented it. But it's about a congressman. He was like, oh my gosh, Rachel, I'm sorry. My wife rented the Wiener movie. And I was like, no! I was like, oh my gosh. I literally yelled, it's Anthony Weiner! He was a congressman running for mayor of New York City. Oh, it was terrible. Oh. So he gets off the phone. He was like, babe. I was like, I know, I forgot. I forgot you look at every line item of every bill that we get in. I'm sorry. Totally forgot. I was like, I was going to put in the Rachel line item with the budget. So we had a good laugh about it. But it's one of those things, you just mess up sometimes, right? You forget to communicate everything. Some spouse goes off doing something, it's just like, oh. So have grace. Have grace for each other in these conversations. And for these conversations, don't just start them here like we did tonight. Continue them on, you guys. Really start to dig in. And I know that some of you have babysitters. Some of you are going back to your hotel for a big weekend in Nashville. But remember, as you leave here tonight, just like we kicked off the event, take this knowledge and don't just leave it in your workbook. Work on this stuff, you guys. Work on this together, because I pray you got some great communication stuff from Les, some good springboards of money conversations to have with your spouse through our time together. and I want you guys to win because I really believe money and marriage is where you both can flourish together as a team. So thank you guys so much for coming tonight and being with us. We so appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you guys. Thanks for being here. Thank you guys. Thank you.
All right, guys. Joining me now is Cliff Neely. Cliff works with us at Ramsey Solutions. How you doing, Cliff?
I'm good, Will.
All right.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Tell us what you do at Ramsey. Tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. I'm a senior vice president within our financial peace division.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So through our work, you've seen financial peace change the lives of millions of people, but how has that impacted your life personally?
Yeah. Christine and I, my wife, Christine, she's not here with me tonight, but we went through Financial Peace University a little over 13 years ago, and it really changed our life, Will. It really did. I could talk about the millions of lives that FPU has changed over the years, but our personal story is one that it's just been amazing. And when we first went through FPU, I felt like we were on baby step zero. We had business degrees and went to great schools and had master's degrees, but we didn't know how to budget. We didn't know how to communicate about finances, and we really didn't know what we didn't know. And when we started the baby steps together, it was really hard at first, but I really can't imagine how the last 13 years would have been had we not started that journey and started working the plan.
Yeah.
It's been, like any marriage, it's been tough at times, and we've had up and downs, and some life happened. But one thing we didn't have to worry about was finances compounding that. And so really beyond any one thing I think Christine and I have ever been through or content we've experienced, it's changed our marriage more than anything else we've ever done.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So if someone's out there watching and they love what they've heard tonight and they're ready to do something about it, they're ready to take the next step, what would you tell that person and what encouragement would you give them?
I'd encourage them to get started, read Total Money Makeover or go through Financial Peace University. But once you get started, don't give up. Because like anything new that you do or new information that you get, it's not always easy at first, and there's bumps in the road. And a lot of times, when we go through tough things or we're having change habits, we like to hit the easy button and bail out. And I just encourage you guys to keep pushing through and don't give up. And and when you're in the middle of it, going week to week and budgeting and month to month, it feels like it's just taking a while, and you wonder, hey, are we ever going to break through and make it to a new baby step? Or are we ever going to figure this thing out? If you just keep, grinding and keep going, you'll look up and, like us, 13 years later, you look back and, look how far we've come. And, now we're, 13 years later, we're on baby step 6. All we have left to pay off is our house, and, and that's almost done. And it's just amazing. It feels like it's gone by so quick. When you look back, it feels like it wasn't that far ago, but we're in the middle of it. It just, you just wonder how long it's going to take. And so I just say, keep going.
Yeah. Keep going. That's awesome. Great advice from Cliff Neely there. Thank you, Cliff, for joining us tonight. And thank you guys for joining us on the live stream. It's been so much fun. I hope you've had as much fun as I've had. This has been fantastic. I hope to see you guys again soon at another live stream or a Ramsey Live event. On behalf of everyone at Ramsey Solutions, thank you for joining us. Happy Valentine's Day.